In the shadowy corners of global folklore, one urban legend has endured with chilling persistence: the tale of the bathtub kidney. The story goes like this. A traveller wakes up groggy in a hotel bathtub filled with ice, a hastily stitched wound along their back, and a note beside them instructing, "Call emergency services. Your kidney has been removed." What began as a digital age campfire story in the 1990s morphed into one of the most infamous and enduring urban legends in modern history. It tapped into primal fears, loss of bodily autonomy, betrayal by strangers, and becoming mere commodity in a dark, indifferent world. For many, it was nothing more than internet-era fear-mongering. But over the decades, disturbing fragments of reality have surfaced enough to raise the question: was this legend ever truly fiction? The earliest known versions of the story emerged in 1997, mostly via forwarded emails and anonymous chain letters. These described a businessman lured by an attractive stranger at a bar, drugged, and later waking in a bathtub of ice. The tale struck a cultural nerve and spread rapidly. Mainstream media, including 20T and the New York Times, reported on the public panic it stirred, even while medical professionals dismissed the plausibility of such an impromptu organ harvest. Debunking sites like Snopes labelled the story a hoax, and for a time it was relegated to the same realm as Bigfoot sightings and alien abductions. But behind the meme was a darker truth slowly beginning to surface. Black market organ trafficking was not only real, it was expanding. Between 2001 and 2020, a string of real-life cases emerged that bore disturbing resemblance to the fictional narrative. These weren't drunken businessmen in Las Vegas, as they were impoverished laborers in India, refugees in Egypt, and abducted children in Southeast Asia. In one case from 2008, police in Gurgaon, India, raided a private clinic where over 500 illegal kidney transplants had occurred. Victims were offered fake jobs, drugged, and wheeled into operating rooms. In Istanbul, Turkish authorities broke up a trafficking ring smuggling Moldovan men into the country for involuntary kidney extraction. While the original urban legend may have been exaggerated, the mechanisms it described, seduction, sedation, and surgical theft, were terrifyingly real in other corners of the world. The medical feasibility of the so-called bathtub kidney scenario has long been debated. Experts agree that harvesting a kidney requires surgical expertise and sterile conditions, but not necessarily high-end equipment. A trained surgeon, even operating in a makeshift clinic, can extract a kidney in under an hour. With proper cooling and transport, often achieved using simple ice-filled containers, the organ can remain viable for up to 36 hours. In many real cases, the donor and recipient are operated on within the same building to avoid the need for transport entirely. The ice bath detail in the urban legend, while dramatic, is not completely off-base. It's consistent with rudimentary preservation methods used in some illegal setups. What makes the bathtub kidney story more terrifying is the truth buried within it. Victims often don't know they've been targeted until it's too late. Some are abducted. Others are tricked into giving consensual donations with fake paperwork and promised payments that never arrive. And then there are those who never wake up at all, whose organs are harvested and whose bodies are disposed of. Interpol, the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, and various NGOs have published reports confirming that human trafficking for organ removal is a documented global issue, with hotspots in India, Pakistan, Egypt, the Philippines, Turkey, and parts of sub-Saharan Africa. Yet, unlike drug or weapons trafficking, organ theft is uniquely difficult to investigate and prosecute. Victims often don't report the crime due to fear, shame, or language barriers. Corrupt hospital staff and falsified medical records obscure evidence. In many jurisdictions, the laws themselves are ambiguous, especially when it comes to distinguishing between coerced and consensual donation. As one Interpol report bluntly stated, the black market operates not in darkness, but in the grey. The most haunting aspect of this phenomenon lies not in rumour, but in the harrowing testimonies of victims, individuals whose stories have been buried beneath jurisdictional grey zones, corrupt networks, and public disbelief. 5 verified, deeply troubling cases that illustrate the real face of involuntary kidney theft. Case 1. Gurgaon, India, 2008. In January 2008, police in Gurgaon, a suburb of Delhi, uncovered one of the largest illegal kidney rackets in modern history. A local doctor, Amit Kumar, had allegedly been running a transplant ring for nearly a decade. Posing as a recruiter for a job placement agency, Kumar's team would lure impoverished labourers from neighbouring states with promises of employment. Once the victims arrived, they were drugged and taken to Kumar's clinic. There, under anaesthesia and without consent, one of their kidneys would be removed and transplanted into wealthy foreign patients, many from the United States, Canada, and the UK. When the ring was busted, it was discovered that over 600 transplants had been performed. Some victims were threatened with death if they spoke out. Others had been operated on multiple times. Police raided the premises and found detailed surgical logs, blood type charts, and refrigeration units containing harvested kidneys. Kumar was eventually arrested in Nepal and extradited, but many suspect he had protection from local officials. Despite the overwhelming evidence, only a handful of convictions followed. Many victims received no compensation or medical care and continue to suffer lifelong complications. Case 2. Istanbul, Turkey, 2001. In 2001, an investigative journalist in Turkey uncovered a trafficking route used to smuggle Moldovan and Ukrainian men into Istanbul under false pretenses. They were told they'd be paid for plasma donations or easy medical trials. Instead, once they arrived, their documents were confiscated and they were taken to a hidden clinic in the outskirts of the city. Interviews later revealed that at least 6 victims had their kidneys removed without informed consent. One man, known publicly only as Sorin, testified that he awoke mid-surgery and was restrained. He later fled back to Moldova and provided testimony to international agencies. What shocked investigators was the apparent complicity of private medical facilities. Forensic analysis showed that the surgeries were not done in underground basements, but in professional operating rooms with certified staff. A full inquiry was launched by Turkish police, yet most prosecutions fell apart due to lack of cooperation from witnesses and sealed hospital records. As with many organ trade cases, the story faded quickly from public memory. Case 3, Cairo, Egypt, 2010. In 2010, the Egyptian Initiative for Personal Rights published a damning report exposing the use of Sudanese and Eritrean refugees in illegal organ harvesting operations. Most victims had crossed into Egypt after fleeing civil unrest and were detained in informal camps or illegal apartments near Cairo. Human rights watchdogs discovered that some refugees had been abducted outright, while others were offered bribes of food, shelter, or safe passage in exchange for organ donation. Once removed, the kidneys were sold to local brokers or transferred via black market couriers to buyers in the Gulf states. A whistleblower within a Cairo clinic eventually exposed the operation after recognizing the volume of young men with identical surgical scars and no paperwork. United Nations observers confirmed multiple victims showed signs of trauma, infection, and psychological breakdown, yet no one was ever successfully prosecuted. In a telling move, several investigative files were marked closed due to insufficient evidence despite direct victim testimony. The United Nations High Commission for Human Rights described the case as credible, severe, and unresolved. Case 4. Durban, South Africa, 2003. In 2003, a nurse at a state hospital in Durban anonymously leaked details of a covert operation where underage girls, reportedly trafficked from Mozambique, were being subjected to illegal surgeries. Initially dismissed as rumour, the claims were eventually corroborated by police who found inconsistencies in hospital admission logs and missing patient records. One 14-year-old girl rescued during a raid confirmed she had been drugged at a border checkpoint and woke up with surgical scars. Her testimony revealed that a doctor and two nurses had been operating an after-hours transplant program using hospital equipment and storing organs in portable coolers. Investigators found blood-type documentation and transport contracts in the suspects' homes. However, the legal case collapsed in court due to procedural failures, including the disappearance of key medical records. Activists later revealed that the lead surgeon in the case had relocated to Dubai, continuing work in a private clinic. The Durban incident highlighted a new trend in illegal organ trade, co-opting existing medical infrastructure and staffing to mask criminal activity under the veil of legitimacy. Case 5, Manila, Philippines, 2012. Perhaps the most eerily aligned with the urban legend, the case of 16-year-old Nico made headlines briefly in the Philippines before vanishing from the public radar. In July 2012, Nico was found unconscious in a cheap motel bathtub in Quezon City, submerged in ice. His back bore fresh stitches. He was rushed to hospital and doctors confirmed one kidney was missing. CCTV from a nearby street showed Nico had been approached by two men in a van days earlier. Witnesses claimed similar vans had been seen near homeless shelters and school exits, allegedly offering teenagers quick cash. Despite public outrage, the case was quickly buried under bureaucratic delays. The motel's registry was mysteriously wiped and police cited a lack of actionable evidence. Nico's family was pressured to stop speaking to journalists. Human Rights Watch later listed this case in a regional report on organ theft, stating that its symbolic similarity to the fictional bathtub kidney narrative highlights the real-world danger of reducing organ trafficking to mere folklore. To understand how illegal kidney theft occurs, one must strip away the melodrama of urban legend and examine the cold clinical logistics behind the trade. Contrary to popular belief, the black market organ trade does not operate in dark alleyways or candlelit basements. It thrives in environments that closely resemble legitimate medicine, sterile rooms, licensed professionals, hospital-grade equipment, and streamlined buyer-broker pipelines. A kidney is not like a smuggled jewel. It has a short viability window, ideally under 36 hours from extraction to transplantation. For this reason, illegal transplants often occur in the same location as the extraction. Brokers typically coordinate the logistics, matching a recipient from a wealthier nation often via online forums or word-of-mouth networks with a donor coerced or tricked into giving up their organ. Many of these donors come from impoverished backgrounds, lured by promises of cash or under the illusion of a legal transaction. In more sinister cases, the victims never agree at all. They are drugged, sedated, and harvested against their will. Former World Health Organization advisor Dr. Luke Noel once described the illicit organ trade as a system with the efficiency of a travel agency. Flights are booked, visas secured, bribes paid, and operations scheduled, all under the radar of medical regulatory boards. Surgeons performing these procedures range from rogue professionals to fully licensed practitioners working for extra cash on the side. Clinics complicit in these schemes often falsify consent records or fabricate identities to show plausible legality. One example of the precision involved came from a 2016 Europol sting, in which an Albanian organ broker was caught using a system of WhatsApp messages and cloud-based medical databases to coordinate transplants across borders. He had access to blood type registries, anesthesia teams, and even an air ambulance. The scale of the operation shocked investigators. It wasn't slapdash, it was professionalized, monetized, and far-reaching. The myth of the bathtub kidney still resonates today, not because it is medically likely in the way it is typically portrayed, but because its symbolic structure mirrors real dangers. Most people who wake up in a bathtub of ice in the real world are either drug overdose victims or film protagonists. Yet the components of the story, sudden unconsciousness, unfamiliar environment, non-consensual surgery, all happen in some variation across the globe. The reason this myth persists so powerfully is because it feeds on universal fears. The fear of losing control, of being reduced to a set of parts, of the commodification of the human body. In an increasingly transactional world where personal data, labour, and even emotions are bought and sold, the idea of being harvested like livestock becomes a hyperbolic yet oddly familiar anxiety. It also doesn't help that fictionalized versions of the myth continue to surface in media. Films like Sinister's Adrenaline Rush and episodes of Law and Order have dramatized the concept. Even medical dramas like House and Grey's Anatomy have run plotlines about illegal organ trade, often blending real-world medical feasibility with heightened drama. This blur of fact and fiction only deepens the legend's grip. But beyond its symbolic resonance, what does the real evidence tell us? International law does address organ trafficking, at least on paper. The Declaration of Istanbul 2008 and the United Nations Protocols Against Human Trafficking include provisions to criminalize the removal and trade of organs without full informed consent. But enforcement remains weak. Between 2010 and 2020, only a few hundred convictions were recorded globally, while estimates of unreported cases number in the tens of thousands. The secrecy, desperation, and multinational nature of these crimes make them uniquely difficult to prosecute. Some countries have taken drastic measures. In Israel, health insurance companies are banned from reimbursing transplants performed abroad unless full documentation is provided. In China, accusations of state-run harvesting of prisoner organs led to international condemnation, although the government denies these claims and has declared reforms. Meanwhile, in countries like India and the Philippines, efforts to tighten donor regulations have often been undercut by corruption and bribery. From a medical ethics standpoint, experts are beginning to debate whether the global shortage of legal donors has indirectly created the conditions for this black market. As of 2024, over 100,000 people are on transplant waiting lists in the US alone. Some patients die waiting. This has given rise to transplant tourism, where patients travel abroad to receive organs, often under conditions they either don't understand or actively choose to ignore. Therein lies a complicity rarely spoken aloud. The demand exists because there are buyers. The bathtub kidney myth endures not because it's plausible in every detail, but because it speaks to something much older and deeper in the human psyche. Fear of being harvested, of losing one's body to systems beyond our understanding or control. Long before email chains and viral hoaxes, similar anxieties found their way into folklore. In ancient Mesopotamia, there were tales of desert spirits who stole organs in the night. In 19th century Britain, the resurrection men were real body snatchers who supplied cadavers to medical schools for dissection. In some African traditions, belief in witch doctors who steal internal organs for ritual purposes still persists. It's a fear of violation at the deepest level, not just of physical harm, but of being transformed into a commodity stripped of identity, purpose, and consent. That fear gets modernized with each generation. In the 1990s, it was organ theft. Today, it's data harvesting and biometric surveillance. Tomorrow, it might be synthetic replication or cloning. But the core terror remains unchanged, being used. What's disturbing about the modern organ trade is not just that it happens, but that it happens quietly. In most of the real cases, there were no dramatic rescues, no headlines splashed across international news, no justice served. Victims like Nico in Manila or the refugees in Cairo vanish into a system that is opaque, unaccountable, and disturbingly efficient. Their stories exist only because a few journalists, activists, or whistleblowers refuse to look away. Even law enforcement often finds itself overwhelmed or complicit. In several of the cases detailed earlier, police departments either lost evidence, dropped charges, or closed investigations without explanation. It raises unsettling questions. How many others were taken, harvested, and discarded without so much as a report being filed? How many medical professionals know what's happening and choose silence? Then there's the ethical murk of demand. A wealthy patient from London or New York, desperate for a transplant and facing years on a wait list, is offered a chance, a surgery abroad, no questions asked. The organ is a donation, they're told. They may suspect, but they don't confirm. And so the surgery proceeds, the kidney is accepted, and a silent chain is completed. Victim, trafficker, broker, surgeon, recipient. In that chain, no one fully looks the other in the eye. This moral ambiguity is what gives the bathtub kidney myth such staying power. It's a rare urban legend that isn't just about what might happen to you, it's also about what you might do if desperate enough. Would you accept a kidney if it saved your life, even if you knew or suspected it came from someone unwilling? That haunting question is what elevates this myth above mere shock value. It becomes a parable. And yet there are still those who call it nonsense. Detractors argue that the story's viral origins, laughable grammar, in early chain emails, vague details, friend of a friend narration, undermine its credibility. They point out that in most developed countries, the idea of someone being operated on without medical oversight is preposterous, and they're not entirely wrong. The myth is oversimplified, over-sensationalized, and in its purest form, implausible. But like many urban legends, the truth isn't in the letter, it's in the spirit. Consider the numbers. The Global Financial Integrity Organization estimates the black market organ trade to generate between $600 billion and $1 billion annually. According to World Health Organization data, approximately 10 of all organ transplants globally are thought to be illegal, a staggering statistic when considering the volume of surgeries performed every year. These are not isolated incidents. They're part of a shadow network. At the time of writing, the waitlist for kidney transplants in the UK is over 6,000 patients long. In the US, over 90,000. And in many parts of the world, a new underground economy has emerged to fill that gap, one fueled by desperation, sustained by inequality, and covered in the fog of deniability. The bathtub may have been a metaphor. The scar was real. Summary and speculation. The bathtub kidney legend is not a fantasy. It is an exaggerated mirror held up to a chilling reality. While no confirmed Western case has followed the exact format of the mythotel, bathtub, note, the components it exaggerates are grounded in documented practice. Organ theft exists. Illegal transplants occur. Victims are real. Networks are professionalized, and prosecution remains rare. What remains unanswered is how many victims never return to tell their story. How many recipients suspect their organ's origin, but never ask? How many governments have quietly tolerated these crimes to manage transplant demand? As technology evolves from bioprinting organs to blockchain tracking of medical assets, the black market may one day vanish. But until then, the legend persists. Not because it is absurd, but because in all its terrifying simplicity it is possible.